What is up, guys? It is Carly here bringing you another weekly dose of horror, and today we're going to be talking about a movie from 1977, and that is The Car. Yes, this is, I guess you consider it like road horror or just evil vehicle horror, if you will, but The Car is pretty much just about this small, peaceful town, your average Western town, and one day out of nowhere this car driven by some unknown person or force comes along and starts terrorizing the people. So the sheriff, as well as his girlfriend and some other people in the town, are trying to get to the bottom of who it is that's driving around trying to kill people, and along the way they kind of discover that there might be some supernatural force that's actually driving this car and causing it to do what it's doing, and it might actually be the car that is evil and not the person inside, if there even is a person inside. So that's kind of what's going on with The Car. I saw this for the first time when I was a little kid, and not too little, probably around 10 or 11, that age range, and I was kind of on a kick of watching road horror and just vehicle horror in general. So my mom and I remember picked this one up and watched it, and we both didn't really care for it too much, so I never really checked it out again until a few years ago when I watched it during a movie night at one of my friends' houses with JP, and even then I still didn't care for it too much. Now, upon this rewatch, I feel like I enjoyed it probably the most. One thing I always had an issue with was it just kind of feels like it's a little bit too long and has some parts that go a little bit too slow. I mean, it only runs an hour and 37 minutes, but it just feels like there might have been some scenes that could have been cut down a little bit, and I feel like they're meant to build tension and things like that, but you also just get some boring scenes that are just dealing with, the main girl in the movie who's a teacher. She's kind of directing this marching band, and then you have some scenes with the sheriff just at the police station trying to figure some things out, and those scenes are okay in movies, but for some reason in this one it always just feels like it drags on a little bit too long. But I will say, there's also some scenes in the movie that come off as a little bit goofy. Like, you have this one part where the car attacks the marching band and these horses. I forget what's actually going on, but they're marching, and the whole town's kind of gathered around, and the car comes and attacks, and they're all running to the hills, and the teacher starts screaming things and yelling at the car and throwing things at it. So it comes off as a little silly when you watch it now, and there's also some other moments in the movie that come off as a little bit comical. There's this one, probably, I guess you could say, infamous moment where the car comes through a house, and I remember watching it with JP and my friends, and we were just laughing at it. But I will say, watching it by myself, I actually thought it was a little bit creepy at times. It is kind of terrifying to think that a vehicle could just be following you and chasing you, and it's hard to really get away from a car when it's right behind you. The beginning scene, you have these two kids on a bike, and they're just biking, and the car comes up really fast and they can't get away, and I think that is kind of terrifying. And the scene where it does attack the marching band as well as all the other people out there is pretty scary too, honestly, because they're all just trying to run for the hills and not get hit by this vehicle. The look of the car also kind of makes it, because it's just this black, I forget what kind of vehicle it is, but it's just black, and I kind of think that symbolizes the evil that it is, and that makes it a little bit more intimidating looking. It kind of sounds silly to be talking about a car like that, but that's just kind of how I felt watching it this time. And funny enough, I fell asleep before the movie completely wrapped up, probably within the last 20 minutes, and I finished it in the morning. But when I fell asleep, I actually had a nightmare about the car attacking me, so I give it credit for that, for actually giving me a bad dream, because that actually very rarely happens nowadays, where I watch a movie and it affects me to where I have a nightmare about it. So good for you, The Car. Overall, I think it is a pretty good movie. I can see why a lot of people like it. It's one that has definitely grown on me with the 2 rewatches I have given it. So, and that's another thing that rarely happens. People always say movies grow on you, but I feel like for me, a lot of times the way I feel about a movie is the way I feel about it, and sometimes the movie actually might go down a little bit for me, if anything. So with this one, it actually has grown on me, and it is one that I would continue to give rewatches to in the future, and hopefully it could become one that I like a lot more as time goes on. But for now, I give The Car a 7.5 out of 10. I think that's a pretty fair rating for a movie like this. Definitely recommend it if you have not seen it and you are into the classic road horror movies such as Duel or The Hitcher. It's not necessarily like that, like a cat and mouse type of movie, as much as it is like an evil car. I wouldn't really compare it to Christine either, because that's kind of a totally different storyline. That one's more about the kid in the film, but if you like evil vehicles, then definitely check this one out. So thank you guys once again for joining me for this weekly dose of horror, and as always, I will see you next week.